yourselves.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. We're delighted to be here. So as Sarah just said, we are super excited to share with you today a vision and some tools for better ways that raw materials companies can align with this notion of responsible by actually engaging in social investment activities that truly support broad-based prosperity and community resilience. So we are Liz and Rachel, co-founders of Sympact. Sympact is a sustainability think tank and ESG consultancy based in Vancouver, Canada, that works predominantly with the mining and metals sector. And we're really focused on helping companies not just measure and report, but actively achieve and mature strong performance across the ESG spectrum with a very particular focus on the S in ESG. So first, the context of what we're talking about today. There's a lot of research out there that shows that despite the good intentions, all over the world, the mining sector is still struggling to share benefits and contribute to the growth of vibrant local communities in a lasting way. So there are a lot of reasons for this that we can't dive into with just 10 minutes. But what's important to note is that lately the specific ESG area is facing an increasing level of scrutiny from investors. It's a growing risk area. Even just this morning, the International Institute for Environment and Development actually released a new report with the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, showing how all over the world, we are seeing an absolutely exponential increase in legislation requiring community development contributions by industry. So the trend is clear. Societal expectations are rapidly growing to move beyond the mindset of just zero harm to actively play a way greater role in creating positive, lasting social impact outside the fence.
And so that brings us to the question of how do companies relate to the communities that they operate in? So many of us are familiar with the current shift from shareholder primacy on the left of the slide to taking a stakeholder lens in the middle. And that last one considers the expectations of groups that have a stake in how you operate. So your employees, your suppliers, your customers, and the communities that you operate in. And in that middle illustration, you can see that there are areas where company interest and society interest overlap. So those overlaps are spaces where you could conceivably create win-win opportunities. So for example, your company could contribute to a local food bank, or it could provide scholarships for local students to become remote haul truck operators. So the result is that the community benefits and your company builds relationships and social acceptance, and it will be able to hire qualified employees locally. So a win-win. But in reality, companies are not, in fact, separate from the society and the environment with some overlapping areas of interest. They are deeply embedded in the communities in which they operate. And those communities, in turn, are embedded in broader ecosystems. And ultimately, we're all part of the broader planet and need to operate within its planetary boundaries, as is illustrated on the right there. So in the long term, community resilience, or whether a community thrives, affects your company's success. And we know this, right? COVID-19, as devastating as it continues to be, is also a very unfortunate but clear illustration of how the health of communities around you can affect your company, the way it operates, if it operates, and even its profitability. Or for another example, you can think of worker days that are lost to malaria based on your context, or the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, or the levels of educational attainment around your mine and whether you are able to procure or hire locally as a result of that. Or you can even think more broadly about climate change and the potential disruptive risks that poses to companies. So all of that to say, it is important to take a systems lens and to recognize that companies are embedded in these broader systems. That companies benefit when these systems are resilient, that understanding this helps companies manage disruptive risk that comes from those systems. And lastly, that social investment is a strategic tool in supporting the resilience of local communities, while also contributing to your company's broader social performance and its social license.
So as a disclaimer, a social investment is not a silver bullet, nor can it exist in a silo. Now, a lot of great work has been done on social performance and understanding the root of social license over a decade now by a number of industry veterans and in mining. But in addition to the foundational notions that many of us are familiar with now, managing your impacts, engaging properly, showing procedural fairness, fostering trustworthiness, upholding your social contract, and so on, effective social investment, when it is embedded in a robust social management approach, like if you look at the simplified diagram here on the left, really helps your company to deliver more than just zero harm and truly maximize benefits to society. And we believe this will increasingly be core to fostering social acceptance in the future, as well as anticipating and mitigate your company risk in any industry, I should say. And that is a big part of, again, linking to responding to evolving societal expectations.
So we're seeing that leading companies are moving away from this focus on philanthropy and sponsorship. And so what we put together here are some considerations that we think will be helpful for companies that are looking to contribute to long-term thriving communities using social investment. So first, we would suggest that you focus on what resilience means locally and what local priorities are. Now, that said, there are many communities that do not have clearly articulated visions for this, and that's just the reality. But in those cases, there may be an opportunity for your company to support the development of that vision by the community. Next, we recommend investing in systems level initiatives. And now that doesn't mean that you now need to ignore the needs of your local food bank or local women's shelter. But what it does mean is that you should also consider contributing to initiatives that sort of dig below the surface to address the cause of these kind of deeply rooted challenges like food insecurity or gender-based violence. And lastly, and we'd say this applies broadly, it is important for the lasting success of these kinds of initiatives to support co-creation and co-design of the initiatives, and to respectfully involve people with lived experience along other types of experts. And then moving on to the next slide. So in addition to these emerging approaches, we've also wanted to highlight that there's a number of new tools that help companies decide, implement, and fund these kinds of efforts. So the first one here is the prioritization radar. It was developed by the Embedding Project, and we contributed to the social and governance dimensions of it. This tool, it offers companies a systematic process to explore emerging sustainability risk and opportunity. So across their operations, across their value chain, across the broader ecosystem, and then to rank it, to rank sort of their strategic relevance to the business. So basically it helps companies prioritize how to best deploy their resources in this space. And so this radar, unlike materiality processes that we may be familiar with, is actually designed to inform company strategy, and not exclusively for social investment, but certainly for social investment as part of broader organizational strategy. And then next, we have social innovation. That term describes initiatives that challenge the status quo of social systems that have these deeply rooted issues, like maybe unemployment or homelessness or poverty and others. And the goal is then to create lasting transformation for the better, of course. And solutions labs are one example of a social innovation initiative. So essentially, you'd bring together a broad range of groups or individuals that have an interest, a stake, or experience in a particular challenge, and you'd invite them to co-create solutions to help address the challenge, bringing together their varied expertise, their particular perspective, and if relevant, resources that might support it. So for example, there may be a solutions lab to collectively address food security in some communities where that's relevant. One concept we designed was for a company facing a possible permit extension or closure. So they weren't sure at the time which it was going to be. And they wanted to engage the broader community in a conversation about local economic resilience. The goals of that engagement were, on the one side, that community members, organizations, and the company could build the new connections to potentially collaborate and build these new solutions together. But the second one is that the company would better understand its place in that bigger picture, of the ecosystem, and sort of what opportunities there were for them to contribute to economic resilience, including in the case of closure, if that were to happen. So them as part of that broader ecosystem. And another initiative that we're currently hosted is a company-funded, but a community-led, coordinated regional approach to community wellness. It's in a group of remote northern communities in Alaska. And in this case, there's a group of key community organizations and their representatives that are collaborating to create a lab that will bring the broader community together to co-design solutions that tackle community wellness at a systems level for the benefit of the whole broader region. So these are some ways that companies are investing in social innovation to manage their social risk and to foster their social license.
So the last tool that we want to highlight here is social impact investment, a much overused term. But to start with, I have a definition here of the word investment, which I think is really valuable to sort of drive home the point. An investment is to allocate money with the expectation of a positive benefit, return, or tangible result in the future, which does not really reflect the approach that the vast majority of mining companies are still taking in what they call community investment or corporate social investment. And so what we want to show with this tool is actually a spectrum of vehicles for impact. And in particular, let's take a page out of the investment world's book, the intentional maturing beyond mere philanthropy, to really focus on tangible, broad, sustainable future results. So if you look at the spectrum here on the far left side, you see traditional philanthropic activities. Here, your community investment activities are relatively siloed, usually ad hoc. The focus is on inputs like dollars spent and sometimes outputs, basically the sort of stuff that you'll see that goes into your GRI report at the end of the year. Now, this kind of spend largely provides a reputational or a short-term benefit, but it's rarely sustainable in its impact on big picture, wicked problems at a systems level. And the reality is in mining, too many of our initiatives that are intended to contribute to community development do still live on this far left end. And typically there is a time and a place, but if all your dollars are going there, you're probably not being very effective in your efforts. So as we move from left to right, we start to see different types of market tools, partnerships, investment style vehicles. And here we're explicitly designing beyond the fence line, beyond the time-bound mining life cycle, and positioning the mine as only one of many actors in the system. So what that means is more stakeholder collaboration, co-creation, this idea of doing with versus doing for. And there's a drive for measurable outcomes and returns, whether they be financial or social, as well as a core focus on lasting multi-party outcomes and, again, broad-based prosperity. So some examples of what we could do at the right side of the spectrum might be no interest loans, impact investment funds, business incubators, social impact bonds, community mineral development equity, and profit sharing in the mine itself. So with these new tools, we believe social investment can be a very strong risk management tool. And in fact, in the future, we think it may well be the way forward for mining companies themselves, not just their social investment programs. So lastly, if you are interested in the subject of community resilience and would like some further reading, we'd encourage you to check out this guide that we recently created for the embedding project, specifically on helping companies understand community resilience and what their role can be. So with that, we will wrap up. A big thank you for your attention and huge thank you to Sarah, Rose, and the team for bringing us together today. We would love to hear your thoughts, maybe any experiences you have with what we've been chatting about today, and of course, questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much, Liz and Rachel. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together from behind your microphones for an absolutely fantastic talk. Peppered or littered, should I say? Actually, no, littering's bad. Filled with fantastic tools and techniques that we can use with regards to this area. So that's brilliant. And I think that actually, so this talk we've just heard now goes really, really nicely with the talk that Susan Joyce gave yesterday. So when we're looking at what does that S look like within ESG, and I suspect you guys know one another very well, seeing as you all live in the same neck of the woods, as it were. So just while we're waiting for a load of the other questions that are coming in thick and fast via lots of different channels, etc. Liz, am I right in saying that you have a podcast?
I do have a podcast, yes. It is called Prospecting Purpose. It's hosted by Sympact, and we actually just launched it 4 weeks ago, so it's brand new. We are releasing an episode every Wednesday at the moment, and actually a number of our guests are part of this conference too, which we're really excited to see.
Fantastic. And if you want to advertise that podcast at all, stick it into the chat, because I'm sure that lots of people will be interested in that. And Rachel, I mean, I guess with regards to Sympact, is this a recently set up company, or have you guys been going for a long while?
A little bit of both, I guess. We launched the brand in March, so the brand is pretty recent, but Liz and I have worked together for quite some time. We started building this company last year. So this has been in the works for a while. It's just the brand has been out there a little bit more recently. So it looks brand new, but it's been a longer term collaboration for sure.
Fantastic. And so what was your impetus, I guess, for setting it up? Because it's a fabulous brand, and you've certainly pulled together some brilliant bits and pieces and tools and techniques within it.
Ooh, the impetus, I guess it's partly that we were, we have complementary skill sets and a shared interest in actually supporting the industry and doing better in the space of S in particular, the social space in particular. We found ourselves both doing independent work and thought we would be better together, bringing both our perspectives to the work and supporting each other that way. So that's a high level how it started. Pooling our skills, pooling our knowledge, pooling our ability to do this work together more effectively.
Brilliant. No, and it's fantastic. Massive congratulations on it. I'm going to pull Nick Copeland actually into this conversation, because I know we were messaging behind the scenes, really very much sparked by where your presentation started. So Nick, I don't know if you had any comments or questions you wanted to ask to Liz and Rachel.
Well, I think it's really fascinating because, again, these frameworks are then making questions that even go down to issues that are on the presidential election agenda in major mining countries like Peru. And that is live and imminent right now, with real potential for a significant lurch to the hard left in Peru. And a lot of the discussion is around, why are there poor people in a rich country where the mining royalties are so large? And of course, the canon minero has been an issue for more than a decade in terms of making sure that tangible benefits are seen, that local development programs are executed properly. And in many times, the provincial governments lack the local capacity to really engineer and deliver projects using the receipts. And then a large percentage also gets passed, through the back door to their accounts in offshore havens or other sort of corrupt enterprises, which is a real shame. But as a result, it's not really the mining company's fault, but perhaps they were too slow, too vague in how they ensured that the government was ensuring the local delivery of the royalties. And now it is coming and biting them extremely hard. And the presidential candidate who is in the lead is talking about nationalization. He's talking about renegotiation. Even the closest contender, Fujimori, has had to come up with a new idea around royalty disbursement. And she's saying that she will give 40% of royalties directly to the population. That is going to create a short-term gain, but perhaps a longer-term dependency on these royalties. Closure planning, my God. So I think I wanted to make that comment, but also ask Liz in particular, hi there, and say, how can the Peruvian government have got this so badly wrong? What can we as, professionals in the space do to help engage with these countries that should be doing better?
Mm-hmm. I think two thoughts come to mind. One is, I believe that your question is well answered by some of what Peter was just talking about. We don't get to solutions if we don't have everyone at the table. So the idea of companies and governments alone having a conversation, working together, it's not enough. And then the second thing I would say is also an idea that we're still very stuck on in the industry, is the idea that royalties are enough, that royalties need to be sent in different direction. This is part of a bigger thing that is happening in the world. This is not mining specific. There is a growing expectation for business to be doing a hell of a lot more. Inequality has been growing and growing and growing, and there needs to be a better distribution and sharing of the benefits of the profit of business. That is what we are seeing at a macro level happen. So that really challenges, I think, the idea of how we've traditionally tried to share benefits. I don't know if that answers your question.
That was brilliant, Liz. Rachel, do you want to add anything into that?
Maybe just to say that that's one, obviously a very clear context where this is happening, but I would say it applies across the board for companies if they say have operations in one community and are looking to develop new projects elsewhere. The legacy, so to speak, that you create or the impact that you have now in other communities will affect anything you're looking to do elsewhere, right? It's not in isolation. So that I think is an important thing to flag.
Fantastic. So loads more that we could talk about here, but I'd just like to say another massive thank you very, very much to Liz and Rachel. Absolutely brilliant, and good luck with everything. So round of applause. Thank you very much, guys. Fantastic.